You are listening to the Taps and Teas Show, weekly conversations for people passionate about marketing, golf, and craft beer. Marty is the co-founder of Bad Rhino, an award-winning digital marketing agency helping golf and craft beer brands get real results in social media marketing. Here is your host, Marty McDonald.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Taps and Teas. This is Marty McDonald, and continuing on with our theme here for marketing interviews, I'm bringing on another, we'll call them wise guys. I don't know, I've been futzing around with these intros, what do I call everybody and do all that, but this guy that I'm bringing on here, I've gotten to know over the past couple of years. We're in some masterminds together, and if you haven't noticed, that's been a common theme of what I've been talking about is a lot of these people I've known for years, or I brought it in through mastermind groups that I'm in, and it's key. You need to network. You need to be out there no matter what business you're in, and Chris is one of those guys that when you start talking to him, he has all these great ideas. Every time I talk to him, whether in person or on the phone or via Zoom or in a mastermind group, it's he gets rolling, and it's just all right, dude, sometimes I want to say, I got enough from you and I need you to stop, but it's all good stuff. And Chris is the founder of and president of Rankings.io, and he specializes in personal injury lawyer SEO. Now, I know, what does that have to do with craft beer and golf? Well, there's quite a few things, and Chris has made the Inc. 5000 of the fastest growing private companies, and he's pretty sure he's going to be included again in 2020. And the best thing about Chris is he just kind of gives it to you straight, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And a lot of the times in SEO, you get the runaround, right? And you don't want to do that. And if you're sitting there as a craft brewery owner and you're looking to get more traffic and you're looking to do certain things, or your golf course that you're looking to get more traffic via SEO, this is important. And without further ado, I'll let Chris expand some more. So Chris, are you there?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Marty. So just CEO and founder of Rankings.io, a personal injury law firm SEO agency. The thing I'll say is, I've been doing SEO for 14 years in every industry. I did affiliate marketing. I've done affiliate marketing for the golf niche. And so I'm very familiar with just the different aspects of the landscape and marketing in general.
Yep. And that's why I wanted to have you on. Tell me how you started, in SEO, and then how you started your own agency.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. So I got a history education degree, and I got hired as a detention room teacher, which was the person that had to manage the alternative classroom and the kids that had to stay after school. And it was just awful, right? So I had the worst students. And there was only so much surfing the net and looking at ESPN that I could do. So I did the worst thing ever. I typed in how to make money online.
Uh-oh.
And once I got past all the surveys and things that people wanted to pay me to fill out, I found a course called Ed Dale's 30-Day Challenge to Digital Marketing. I took that course, and I think I made $20 at the end of it. But by the end of my second year at this high school, I was making more than the teachers were as this little side gig doing affiliate marketing. So I decided to pursue it full time. That's where I got into affiliate marketing and then consulting and then founding my own business.
Sounds familiar. Very similar story. I think that's why a lot of things when we chat, it kind of goes off tangent, because I just remember doing a lot of the same things on the side. So how did it become your agency and kind of your full-time type of deal? I mean, obviously the money, but there's a lot of things that go in, and you've had some great growth over the years.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought that I was going to be an affiliate guy forever. I had this just cake job where I had a couple subcontractors and I didn't have to do a lot. Probably the worst time ever, being younger, partying a lot and doing that kind of thing. But around 2011, that first penguin algorithm hit, and that really checked all of us SEO specialists. We weren't doing everything by the book, and utilizing those evergreen strategies. So my income went from, let's say, $15,000 a month to $2,000 a month almost overnight. So kind of freaked me out a little bit, and I went and got a job because I was carrying a lot of expenses for rent and vehicles. And so I went and got a job for a digital agency, and I rose to the top to be their lead SEO. And what I found was how they were running their business was definitely not how I would run it. And I saw a lot of things that I just didn't agree upon, and ultimately decided to start my own agency. And I kind of learned from 2011 what not to do for those short-term strategies and to look more at an evergreen long-term strategy.
Right. So I think one of the things that Chris just mentioned there, if you're, a lot of times SEO, when you go out and you look for somebody to do it for you or analyze everything, they look for quick fixes. And there's nothing wrong with that, like in theory. And they're important to get those quick fixes up and running and you can rank faster, but you really need to have a long-term strategy built in there. And SEO is a long game. And that's one of the big things that you see in this industry when people talk about SEO and they're like, well, I want to do SEO, not pay-per-click. That's fine. And pay-per-click can start it right out of the gate where you'll start to see more traffic quickly. SEO is a longer play, but if you only go for the quick fix, odds are things are going to probably fall apart. So Chris, when you started, your own thing, how did you get into just focusing in on lawyers?
So the other digital agency that I worked at, they worked with attorneys, but they were full service and they were mostly a web design agency. They had a small book of business for SEO, but they were working in all different industries. And I really understood that market. And at first I was intimidated to talk to lawyers, but the more that I spoke with them, they're just like you and I. Some of them are great, some of them are assholes. It's just, you get the mix. But what I saw was there's a ton of opportunity because when it comes to SEO, the more competition there is, the more demand there is for marketing services to stand out, and you really need those experts. So I knew that lawyers have been around forever and people are always going to be hurt and injured. So I knew that it was a longer term play, that it would probably be around in the future.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. And in working with lawyers, like when an attorney calls and they say, this is what I want, like what is it that they want? I mean, obviously to be ranked number one, but is there any other details within there that they're looking for to drive sales?
So most attorneys, it depends. So if it's a solo practitioner, maybe they're trying to really get their foot in the door with some direct response marketing and do that pay-per-click and really get some traffic immediately because they really need the lead gen. Or if it's mid to upper market, those individuals have been doing TV and billboards and have a lot of brands. So they're just looking to diversify their lead channel to a different source. So it really depends, but I would say most of the people that we work with have decent brands from TV and billboards, and they're looking to rank on Google in the top 3 spots in the maps or in the organic results, because the pay-per-click, it's so expensive and you're essentially leasing visibility. So they're looking for that evergreen type of placement.
Yeah. And then you mentioned the one thing on the maps, which is relevant for, golf and beer. When you start to like show that out there, and explain it to them, like what's the fastest way you can explain why they need to be listed on maps?
It's the best virtual real estate there is below paid ads. It's the absolute best placement. It also, you can show up with the stars for social proof, and it's just the best positioning for SEO in general.
Yep. So a lot of craft brewers create a ton of content and they put it out on Instagram and Facebook for social content, which is all well and good. Mm-hmm. But many times like that content gets lost in the shuffle because it only goes to Facebook, Instagram, etc. What advice would you give to a craft brewer to take that content and repurpose it for SEO? Same thing for golf. I mean, it's one and the same, I think.
Yeah. So for a strategy to rank in the maps, we could start there. It comes down to relevance, distance, and prominence. So for relevance, all the content that you're producing on your site, that builds relevance. That helps Google understand what your site is about for the consumer. The other thing that people don't talk about a lot are your reviews. When the individuals are commenting on your listings and talking about the types of beer they drink or the hole in a certain golf course, they're just building all this types of relevancy around your topic. And it's essentially content that your customers are writing for you. So the number one thing I would say is really be intentional about acquiring reviews to your Google My Business pages. The second thing, proximity is just a no-brainer. If I was going to give an example for let's say you went on vacation and you typed in best restaurants in St. Louis, you're not going to see restaurants in Chicago. So you have to have, the brewery or the golf course in the location you're trying to rank for. That's a requirement of maps. The third component is prominence. And that's where those social posts and everything that you're doing really contribute to your SEO and your Google Maps. So prominence, the word itself just means being everywhere. So you want to take that content and curate it to all different types of locations, Facebook, Instagram, on your website, on its blog, and just put it everywhere to really so that Google can recognize that you are everywhere, you are trustworthy. And that's the main strategy I would say is utilize that content that you're creating on Instagram and Facebook in multiple locations, even on your Yelp page and your Google My Business page, those images, all of it can be utilized to help your SEO strategy too.
Yeah, I know that's important. And I think the follow-up question to that I get most often going to a craft brewery potential client or current client, or even, same thing on the golf side, is, do I need a blog? And my default answer is, as long as you have content that you want to put out there, or we can devise that. Just real quick, as far as, that thought, is it important to have all that content on your website?
That's a tough question. So
yeah, I know. That's why I'm asking you, because I get it all the time. So I'm hopefully going to use this podcast and this answer, to kind of up my game.
I would say it isn't necessarily a requirement. It is content. The sole purpose of content is to give information to your community and where your individuals congregate and hang out. If you built a huge audience on Instagram and that's where your audience is, and that's where the majority of your content could potentially be. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a blog. The benefit of the blog, though, is it's your asset that you own. You can control the messaging. You can control how it's displayed, and it's there permanently. It doesn't get lost in a feed or get mixed in with other competitors. So the short answer is you don't have to necessarily have a blog, but I think it's very helpful. I think that you could leverage your time when you create a specific piece of content and put it on multiple areas, including your blog.
Oh man, Chris, I was hoping you're coming up with a totally different answer, because that's my answer. But I think the whole point, what you just said, is what I try and press upon, especially craft beer, because it's easy to throw it up on Instagram. It's easy to throw it up on Facebook, but many of them never seen when Instagram just comes through or Facebook comes through and goes, yeah, we're not going to support that content and we just banned you. And they're like, well, why? They'll give you no reason. And it doesn't happen too often. And if you're listening to this, don't freak out about it. It's nothing to worry about. But it's something that you consciously need to remember, that you don't own those platforms. And with a blog and your website, you do own that. So it should be a whole strategy around everything. So what Chris said is, all the things around Google Maps and the SEO pieces, when you think about your actual overall strategy, is where do people go to find you? And most of them will go in Google or using their phones and just looking, restaurants near me, golf courses near me, craft breweries near me. And then it does work. But that content, you want to make sure that you keep. And even if you're saving it somewhere else and not pushing it out on the web, it's important. And I can't stress that enough. But if you can get a blog going, it's equally as important, because it will help everything. So, Chris, when you look at this whole industry and you've been in it for a while, what do you love about it? And if there's one thing, what would you change about it in the marketing industry?
So the thing that I love about it is, in terms of SEO, the thing that I love is controlling the outcome that I'm trying to achieve. So with SEO, I can target multiple keywords, different types of intent that a consumer may be searching for. And what I mean by that is, if you have a funnel, you've got your awareness, your engagement, and your consideration. The other manner that you hear this is know, like, trust. A lot of individuals will just concentrate on the bottom of the funnel, or maybe just the middle of the funnel. Maybe you just engage a lot on social. Maybe you're just putting out the pieces on social, but you're not engaging. The thing that I like about just digital marketing strategies and SEO in general is I can create content for all components of the funnel. If I don't have a lot of awareness and people don't know about me, that's where I can concentrate on my content development or shift it down to the bottom. And I can truly be unique and different from my competitors. I can show my expertise and my unique selling propositions with my content. That's what I love about it compared to, let's say, pay-per-click, where it's direct response, you're leasing. Not to say that it isn't a good lead gen channel if you want to get visibility, but it's not something you really own.
Yeah, that's really good for sure. And anything that you just really, really despise?
Well, the thing that I despise, I will say, is the paid ads. So Google in the past used to have 3 at the top and the sidebar, and I was cool with the sidebar. Now it's 4 paid results. They keep driving those organic positions down, and they're making it more pay to play. And even on the social standpoint, Facebook, you used to be able to post a lot of organic content and get just a ton of visibility, and now they've kind of decreased that percentage, and now it's a little bit more pay to play. So that's kind of the downside of some of these social channels, is they can, throttle back their algorithm and make you pay for more of that visibility to get in the feed.
Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing on the show and want more, head on over to tapsandtees.info and get our free report with game-changing tips and strategies straight to your inbox. Just enter your info and stop being stuck with no marketing plan.
Yeah, 100%. When we started Bad Rhino, there wasn't even an ad platform. Algorithm was easy to push out, and you could figure out things really fast. And that's gotten more and more complicated as we go. And it's, because these companies are looking to make money, and the ad platforms are their main key. And it's a strategy that you have to make your paid campaigns go and be effective, but then your organic should help make everything dance. But a lot of times you don't even notice it, like the algorithms and how they change, and where you think you're putting a great post out there and you're like, why doesn't it get anything? It's just because of that day and time. And it really is I don't want to say a mess, but it's complicated, and it's getting more and more complicated the longer and longer I'm in it, for sure. And with that, we're sitting here talking about that, type of stuff, and the algorithm changes and all the fun stuff that goes into both Google and social media. But we're in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic, or whatever we're going to call it. What have you seen over the past couple of months, Chris, in your business?
So for my business, our lead gen has went to zilch for the last month and a half. Mm-hmm. The difference is, so we work with personal injury attorneys. There aren't individuals out driving as much. I think auto accidents were down 85%. So that's how it really affects me. What I've seen, though, from our customers are some of the firms are being really reactive and just pausing everything, and kind of that fear setting in, where the more growth-minded, abundance-minded clients are investing more. And what I like to say is, can you imagine a time in the last 10 to 20 years where your competitors just stopped marketing? How much better would it be for you to market during this time to gain visibility and stand out? And no one else just stops. You kind of are running in parallel with them. Well, it's just a great opportunity to stand out. Now your messaging has to be different and more empathetic and not as bottom of the funnel salesy, but it's the long play, and that's kind of what I'm seeing right now.
Absolutely. When the leads started to come back, what were they looking for during this time? Anything specific, or just getting back in the game?
For us, most of them were looking for SEO because they kind of understood that these other channels weren't that evergreen type of strategy, and they're looking for the long-term play. And I think that's why social is very strong too, because it's permanent content that lives on your channels. And so that's what they were looking for. I think many of them that were doing TV or built like billboards and paid ads, just a really rough strategy to have when people aren't driving.
Very true. Very true. Do you think, it's hard to look in the crystal ball, but what do you see just in terms of digital and SEO, obviously, because that's your expertise? What do you see like the changes, if anything, for your clients being in, attorneys and personal injury?
The biggest thing that I've seen kind of trending is longer form content ranking better. You have to imagine that Google is getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pages per day added to the web. So if you are writing this short form content, it typically is harder to stand out because it's just so saturated. The other thing is, and I'm trying not to get too nerdy here, but if you have a long query, what is the best brewery near me? Well, you can answer that in 500 or 1,000 words. You know the intent of a consumer that types that in. But if someone just types in the word brewery, you have no clue. Like maybe they're looking for a brewery, who knows what they're looking for.
Right.
One word. So when that situation occurs, when their query is shorter, you have to write longer form content to answer for multiple versions of intent or multiple topics that they may be typing in. So that's one of the biggest things I see is content length is just continuing to grow for those shorter phrases.
Yeah, no. And I think what you just said in terms of where people are searching and goes back to that blog concept and having a strong SEO setup in your website and then any content that you're putting out there and where you're driving that traffic. That's a big thing, what you just said, because that's going to change some things. And I think, in my opinion, like one of these changes coming out of this little, pause in the economy and everything else that's going on is that people are going to be looking at it from how their spend is. And I don't just mean dollars, but time and then effort for not only short term, but then long term things. And what you just said is like the intent, right? So before, many times you'd get a client customer saying, this is what we want to rank for. And having all those things out there was, all the keywords, I should say, and having them all out there was a strategy that you could use. And for certain things, it didn't cost all that much. But now, like you said, the intent. So now if you have breweries that are switching to takeout and they can't have people in their tap room, what keywords are going to be there, right? So it's like, what is the intent of that person searching? And I think that's why I stopped you earlier on the Google Maps thing, because I think that's a huge thing, making sure Google My Business is set up correctly and all those things are set up so you can capture people in that moment that might be looking to call a place and pick up something.
Yeah.
Same thing on the golf side is, a lot of people are looking for a place to play, but they're looking for the rules and like, how are we going to pay and do all that while we're doing this whole social distancing thing. And I'm not saying that you go revamp your entire strategy, but if this goes further, say like 2 years, let's hope to God it doesn't. But even in the short term, 6 months, a lot of those paid campaigns that you might have been running in the past that are based on the keywords, always keep that in mind. Some of those things are going to change because the intent has now changed by that user, and all that's going to create a whole new, whole set of algorithm fun stuff for us to deal with.
100% agree, Marty. So I just think it's imperative, especially, if you can't open up your business or that you have all of these reviews on your Google My Business, go in and reply to all of them. Mm-hmm. Reply to all of them. Naturally include keywords that relate to your business because that helps you be noticed by multiple versions of intent or different queries they could type in. The other thing is when you reply, the person that left the review gets a notification. So they get that top of mind. They're reminded of you, that brand equity. And then last but not least, if you want to rank for best brewery near me or best golf course near me, if you have bad reviews, 1-star reviews, then maybe you haven't been intentional about acquiring reviews because typically the only people that leave them if they're not asked are the people that are unhappy. If you haven't been intentional, you're not going to be able to rank for those superlative queries, best brewery, best golf course, top golf course. That's just tremendous real estate and that you need to show up for from your consumers.
Yeah, I could probably talk to you about another hour about reputation management and reviews, but we don't have that kind of time because it's an interesting part for golf courses and breweries for sure. And it's something I think most of them do a decent job, but there's little nuances to it that can really help your rankings and people finding you really quickly. So, as far as that, I did a bunch of interviews before I started doing these marketing interviews because I thought they were important. And a lot of them are pretty fun, and those are going to be released soon. Normally, I'd like to talk about things what this whole podcast is about, beer and golf. So the first question I have for you, Chris, as we wrap this up is, have you ever had like a favorite beer or a favorite craft beer?
Can I say all of them? Let's say, I'm really partial to Hoegaarden. Really, that's when I pop up and tend to get in the grocery store. But I like all the and everything, IPAs, lagers, you name it.
Yep. No, and I think it's a thing that's important too. Sometimes when you talk about craft beer, and you just like say, yeah, all of them, right? And when you say IPAs and lagers, that's awesome because what is the style of beer and putting it out there and talking about it in the style, I think is important as craft beer has grown. Some people, they're like, oh, well, I like this. And they're like, oh, well, have you ever had this or this? And they're like, no. So it's like, what are you comparing it to? And, it's not a knock on anybody. It's just the education of beer drinker. It's become more and more like wine almost every day, where it's pairing it with food and doing a lot of fun stuff like that. Favorite brewery? Have you ever been to one or taken a tour that's like memorable for you?
Well, I lived in St. Louis for a long time. So,
I know, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, Anheuser.
Careful of your answer.
That's a really fun tour. I gotta say a few here. I will say that I really like let's see here, what's the brewery in North Tampa? Yuengling. I like Yuengling's brewery and their tour. And there's another local one in St. Louis called Four Hands. I'm a big fan of, and Schlafly Bottle Works. Schlafly's got a great tour. It's a really neat facility. So yeah, those are some of my favorite.
No, that's cool. And it's funny you mentioned Yuengling down in Florida, because the original one is in my backyard. I've been there multiple times. And it's the oldest craft brewery or brewery in America. So people will debate whether it's craft beer. Technically, it gives Pennsylvania the lead because it's independently owned. People will debate whether it's technically craft beer or not. But then they had I know they had breweries down in Florida and probably a few other places, but I didn't know they did tours of that one.
So that one that's around Bruceby Downs, that area, North Tampa. And the thing I loved about that tour was they gave you a beer at the beginning of the tour. You didn't have to wait till the tasting room at the end.
Yep. No. Yeah, I know. Well, the one in Pottsville, the original Yuengling, what's really interesting about it is where it's at. So they had to like have different trucks kind of go in there because you couldn't take a big truck. I mean, it's been around for forever. But when I went there, so this was right after I turned 21, so it's like 96. And Yuengling was like the only thing we drank in college. And I went there and it was just like unlimited beer, right? Like at the end of the brewery tour, it was just like you can drink however much you want. They quickly changed that. I don't know. It wasn't because of my crew that went in there, but they had changed that, very quickly thereafter. And when I was in Amsterdam and I went to the Heineken brewery, that was the only other one. They were like, you can sit here for the rest of the day if you want. And I was like, huh. I'm like, that's pretty cool. But you can't really do that. But still, it's a good concept. And then you sit there all day. You golf, Chris, at all?
So I live on a golf course. I'm over in...
Right, you do.
Yep. And Far Oaks over in O'Fallon, Illinois. But I would say I do golf. I wouldn't call myself a double bogey golfer. I would say maybe a triple bogey golfer, if there is something like that.
Oh, there's plenty of them.
Yeah, not a ton, maybe 5-ish times a year. Nice. I want to do a lot more, though.
Yeah, we all do, I think. I mean, I know I do. But, yeah, it's interesting. So my one question when I talk to somebody that's not a big golfer is, like, what's your perception of, like, golf marketing? And you may or may not have the perfect answer, but I know you worked as an affiliate, and in that world. So what's, like, the kind of the thoughts that you have around like what golf does in the marketing world?
Is I think the individuals that just showcase customer service well stand out more. Because I think that, and I could be totally wrong, but I feel like there's a lot, at least where I go, there's a lot more casual golfers. So those that really cater to those individuals stand out a bit more. But, for me, and this is kind of interesting, we could have a whole different topic here. Since I'm not good, I have like a fear of going out on these nicer courses. So I'm looking at the golf course that hasn't been mowed for a little bit and it's got the weeds up on the side. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that I'm kind of looking for to kind of improve my game a little bit better before I move to these nicer ones.
It's so funny that you say that. So I played on, other than when my uncle and grandfather would take me out, I played on like probably one of the biggest dog tracks ever, most of my high school. I won't name it, but it was awful. But, I got to play. It was like, $6 or whatever. I didn't have any money. So I would play there. And then I remember graduating from high school. And then I was playing one summer and I got invited to this club. And I was like, oh, shit, like, here we go. Like, it's fancy and all this. And when I was younger, I played much better than I do now. And I'm all nervous because I'm like, this place, I'm afraid to touch anything, like I was not a country club kid growing up. I'm like afraid to touch anything type of deal. Right. So then I finally get in there and I'm like, man, these guys are going to be really good. And I was like the best one out of the group. They all sucked. Like they were worse than anything. So like I hear that quite often. And I've worked, in the affiliate side in golf and doing some other stuff in golf too. And that's one of the big things that I like, if you follow Barstool Sports, what Foreplay, their podcast and brand off of there has done to me is drop the guard a little bit. I mean, I could sit here and tell you stories, country club stories that would be like, whoa, that's not the type of place I thought it was. And I'm not saying it's Caddyshack, but at the same time, I think it's intimidating for people that don't play. And I think welcoming new golfers and people that, only play 5-6 times a year and dropping their guard so that they do feel comfortable is a huge miss that golf, needs to address. And I think they are. I think it's slowly happening. And unfortunately, you almost have to let the old guard just move on, pass away. And it's an interesting time. And I think you bringing that up just like has me going in a million different directions because there's so many ideas and concepts I've talked to with course owners and country club folks that they want to implement, but they're like, well, we have kind of these people here that don't want to see that. And it's nothing bad, but I think it to invite those people like yourself, you shouldn't feel intimidated. It's a game. And you should have fun and do it. But I understand where you're coming from, and that's a great point to bring out. One of the best ones I've had in these interviews, actually.
Well, thanks, Marty. So one of the things I was going to say is,
Chris.
Yes. I was going to say, you've got your different avatars or different buyers that you want to appeal to for your golf course. Maybe your golf course is high end, and you don't want the people that are terrible, ruining that reputation. Who knows? But I think for an individual like me, where there's a lot more of us than probably them, that's why things like the golf scrambles are really appealing. It's like, well, I can shank one, but at least somebody will hit one good and I can go play off of that.
Yep.
That position.
Yeah. And it's just an interesting take. And I appreciate you coming on today. And, like I said, in doing all these interviews, the whole point is just to bring you a different viewpoint. And, I know based on the numbers that some of you are listening to this, and I want to introduce you to people that I know that I trust and I like, and I actually know, what they're talking about. So even though Chris isn't in the golf arena or craft beer arena and doing marketing all the time, he has a lot of knowledge. And if you know of anybody that can use his services, definitely have them reach out to Chris, because he's somebody that knows what he's doing and can get results. And that's the most important thing in this whole thing. So Chris, thank you very much for coming on and spending some time with me. And I'll see you soon, I hope.
Yeah, Marty, thanks so much for having me.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.